Rupert Harcourt. Chilling tales, paranormal encounters, every story leaves a mark.
The key box was empty when I opened it. Every hook had a number. Every number had a little brass tag. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way to 26. But there was only one key in the box. It was hanging on a hook that had been nailed in afterwards, low down in the corner, where the varnish was still pale around it. The tag on that key did not say 27. It said, "Do not sleep in the last room." Hello guys. Tonight's story is The Last Room at Morrow House, an empty seaside hotel, a demolition survey, and a room that was never on the plans. Settle in. Keep the lights low if you want the proper atmosphere. If this one gets under your skin, leave a comment. Subscribe if you want more. Now, listen carefully, because the first strange thing was not the key. The first strange thing was that nobody wanted to give me the job. I was a freelance property surveyor, mostly council contracts, insurance work, and pre-demolition inventories. I walked through abandoned buildings, photographed anything that could turn into a claim later, noted hazards, checked whether anyone had been sleeping rough inside, and wrote reports that nobody read unless something went wrong. Morrow House was an old hotel on the East Coast, just outside a town that had been dying politely for about 30 years. It sat beyond the last row of guest houses, where the road dipped toward the beach. 4 stories of creamstone, rusted iron balconies, a blue sign with half the letters missing, and a black demolition notice fixed to the front door. The council wanted a final internal inventory before contractors started stripping it. Half a day inside, photographs, notes, back to the car before dark. That was how the job was described. The woman from the council, Elaine Porter, refused to meet me there. She met me in a supermarket car park 2 miles away, engine running, hands tight around the steering wheel. "You have the risk assessment?" she asked. "I have everything you emailed." She handed me a hard hat, a torch, a ring of padlock keys, and a folded paper map of the building. "Do not go alone after 4, she said. I thought she was joking. "The report says no power, no live services, no known occupants. Why after 4? Elaine looked past me at an old man by the trolley shelter, watching us through the plastic panels. "Because it gets dark," she said. "If you find bedding, clothes, food tins, anything that looks recent, photograph it from the doorway and leave. Do not try to move anyone on. Call me." I reached Morrow House at 2:10. The sky was the color of dirty water. The sea beyond the wall was flat and dark. Wind pushed sand across the road in little hissing streams. I parked under the dead hotel sign, took 3 exterior photographs, logged the time, and stood with my hand on the front gate. The gate was chained, but the chain was new. The padlock was new. Everything behind it was old. A place like that has a smell before you enter. Wet plaster, salt, cold metal, the sourness of trapped carpets. It comes out through cracks and vents, as if the building is breathing very slowly. Inside the porch, the main doors had been screwed shut from the outside. I used the side entrance instead. The council key turned stiffly, and the door opened with the swollen scrape of wood that has taken in too much weather. I called out, because you do that in empty buildings, even when you know nobody should answer. "Hello, surveyor. Council contractor. Anyone inside?" The lobby swallowed my voice. It was colder in there than outside. Not just unheated, not just damp, but cold in a clean and deliberate way, like opening a fridge in a dark kitchen. My breath showed as a faint white thread in front of my torch. The lobby still had its reception desk. Behind it were pigeonholes for keys, a brass bell, and a rack of old tourist leaflets turned brown at the edges. On the floor lay a swollen guest book, pages curled and fused by damp. The carpet had a pattern of red diamonds, but mold had eaten it into islands. I took photographs, wide shots first, then the desk, then the ceiling, where a long crack ran from the chandelier, rose to the stairwell. I dictated notes into my recorder. Ground floor lobby. No power. Heavy damp. Ceiling fracture above central stair. Evidence of bird ingress. No signs of current occupation. There were 26 key hooks behind the reception desk. Room numbers 1 to 26. I checked the floor plan Elaine had given me. It matched. 6 rooms on the first floor, 8 on the second, 8 on the third. 4 attic rooms listed as staff quarters, 26 total. Only 1 key remained in the box. Then I took it off the hook. It was warm. Not hot, not impossible, just warm enough that I noticed. As though someone had been holding it a moment before. I put it in an evidence bag, wrote the time, and placed it in the front pocket of my tool vest. The second strange thing happened in the dining room. Morrow House had one of those long hotel dining rooms that feel wrong when empty, because every part of them was designed for noise. Tables sat in rows. A few white cloths remained, grey with damp. The windows faced the sea, but salt had filmed the glass so thickly that daylight came through as a blur. At the far end, one place setting was complete. Knife, fork, spoon, a teacup, a side plate, a folded napkin standing upright like a little white tent. The napkin was clean. Not spotless exactly, but clean enough that it had not been there for years. It looked as if someone from housekeeping had set it out that morning, then walked away before breakfast service. I took photographs and dictated the note. Recent disturbance. Single place setting at South End. No food waste observed. Then I saw the name card. It was tucked under the teacup, half hidden by the saucer. White card. Blue ink. Careful handwriting. Mr. Daniel Mercer. My name. There are moments when the mind does something useful and dishonest. It rushes ahead, finds the least frightening explanation, and drags it back like proof. Maybe someone at the council had arranged it. Maybe it was a bad joke by contractors. But I had not told anyone I was going there except Elaine. I photographed the card. Then I lifted the cup. Under it, pressed into the damp white ring, was a hotel receipt dated 17 October 1989. One night. Single room, no breakfast. That was when something moved upstairs. Not a crash, not pipes, not the settling groan of wet timber. I stood completely still and listened. My torch hummed faintly in my hand. Wind pressed at the windows. Somewhere outside, a gull cried once and was cut off by distance. Above me, a man coughed. It was so ordinary that it was worse than a scream. A tired cough, followed by the soft click of a door latch. I backed out of the dining room and called up the stairs. Hello, council contractor. If anyone is inside, I need you to make yourself known. Nothing. I should have left then. I can say that now, and you can think you would have done better. Maybe you would. But work has a way of making fear feel like incompetence. I had a contract. I had a checklist. and I had the stupid, stubborn thought that if someone was living in there, I could not submit the report without checking. I checked each room from the threshold. Beds with bare mattresses, wardrobes yawning open, curtains stuck to damp glass. In room 4, someone had written, "GET out" on the mirror with a finger through dust. At the far end of the corridor was a fire door to the back stairs. As I walked toward it, I heard the cough again. This time it came from behind me. Room 2. I had just checked room 2. Empty bed, empty wardrobe, bathroom ceiling down. I turned and put my torch beam into the open doorway. The room was empty. It rang again. I picked it up. There was no dial tone, only breathing, not down the line, in the room, close behind me. I dropped the receiver and spun round hard enough to hit my elbow on the bed frame. The room was empty. The curtains stirred, though the window was shut. From inside the bathroom came a small voice. "Mister?" A child. I did not answer. "Mister, it is cold in here." I stepped backward. The bathroom door handle turned once, not all the way, just a little downward movement, testing. Then the landline receiver, hanging by its cord, began to swing gently back and forth. From the earpiece came my own voice, not a recording I remembered making, not exactly. It was me, but flat and careful, like I was trying not to wake someone. "Do not open anything that asks politely." I left room 2 without looking away from the bathroom door. At the stairwell, my phone buzzed. No signal, but a notification appeared anyway. Calendar reminder. Check out, 10:00 a.m. Morrow House, room 12. I had never made it. Below the reminder was a second line. Late departure fee applies. The screen went black. The sensible thing now was not just to leave, but to leave quickly. I went down to the lobby. At least I thought I did. The stairs should have ended by the reception desk. They ended at a corridor I had not seen before. The carpet was cleaner here. Not clean, but less decayed. The walls were covered in yellow floral paper, and every few feet there were framed prints of ships in rough seas. The air smelled of lavender polish and cigarettes. From somewhere far away came music, very faint. A hotel lounge piano playing the same 3 notes over and over. I turned back. Behind me, the stairs continued upward, not down. I stood there with the map in one hand and the torch in the other, trying to make the lines on the paper agree with the space around me. They would not. There was no corridor behind reception. There was no rear wing on the plan. There was no place for what I was looking at. Then a door opened at the far end. A narrow rectangle of warmer yellow light fell across the carpet. Someone inside coughed. "Mr. Mercer," a man's voice called. "You are very late." Some sounds get into the body before the mind translates them. Your own name in an empty building. A chair in a room you cannot see. I did not go toward the voice. I turned and walked the other way, fast, checking doors as I passed. No numbers, no handles on some. One door was bricked up behind the frame. One had water pouring silently from beneath it. Another pulsed once under my palm, as if something large had leaned against the other side. At the end of the corridor, I found the key box. Not a similar one. The same one. It was mounted on the wall under a brass sign that said, "Reception," though there was no desk, no lobby, no front door. 26 hooks. 26 empty spaces. And the added hook in the corner. The key was gone because it was in my pocket. Only now the tag had changed. When I took it out with shaking fingers, the plastic label no longer said, "Do not sleep in the last room." It said, "Return before morning." Behind me, many doors opened at once, not loudly. Soft clicks, one after another, traveling down the corridor like a row of people unlocking their rooms. I ran. The corridor did not end where it should. It bent left, then right, then sloped down, though my legs knew I was still on level ground. The carpet changed beneath me to bare boards that flexed and squealed. At one point I passed an open doorway and saw the dining room. All the tables were full. Not clearly. More like dark suits and pale hands arranged in the shapes of guests. Heads turned as I passed. At the far end, a place had been left empty for me. My name card stood beside the clean napkin. Something under the table reached from my ankle. I kicked free and kept running. The corridor ended at an old cage lift that was not on the plans. Its indicator had no numbers, only words. Lobby. Dining. The needle pointed to SEA. Inside the lift stood a man in a burgundy hotel uniform, his collar dark with water. "Going down?" he asked. When he turned, his face was a flat, pale oval with features moving underneath it, trying to find the right place. From behind me, the child whispered, "Mister, please." The porter raised one white hand and pointed to a door I had not noticed. It was small and plain, tucked between two ship prints. On it was a brass number. 12. My key turned in the lock before I decided to use it. I do not remember putting the key in. I remember my hand moving, the metal warming in my palm, the click of the tumblers, and the sudden terrible certainty that the room had been waiting so long it had become patient. The door opened into darkness. Then the bedside lamp switched on. Room 12 was dry. That was what made it worse. The bed was made. The carpet was clean. 2 towels hung neatly in the bathroom. A television sat opposite the bed. Rain tapped against the window. But when I looked out, there was no sea, no promenade, no town. Only other windows. Hundreds of them, stacked in blackness. Hotel windows, all facing mine. In every one, a figure stood watching. On the desk was the guest book from the lobby. It lay open to a page dated 17 October 1989. Name, Daniel Mercer. Room, 12. Signature, mine. The television clicked on, static filled the screen, then a grainy black and white image appeared. The lobby. Reception desk. Key box. A man entering through the side door. Me. I watched myself call out to the empty building. The image cut to the dining room. Me finding the place setting. Me lifting the cup. Me reading the receipt. It cut again. Room 2. Me standing with the dead phone in my hand. Behind me, the bathroom door slowly opened. Something came out of the bathroom behind the version of me on the television. It was small, about the height of a child, but the proportions were wrong. The head hung forward. The arms were too long, water streamed from its hair and fingers, but it left no puddle. It stood behind me on the screen and raised one hand. In the real room, behind my left shoulder, a wet hand touched my coat. I screamed then, properly screamed. The sound seemed to vanish into the walls. I spun around and saw nothing but the bed, the lamp, the closed bathroom door. The television showed my back. The thing was still behind me on the screen. It leaned close to television me and opened a mouth that split far too wide. The sound came from the dead phone beside the bed. You took the key. The phone began ringing. I grabbed the lamp and threw it at the television. The screen burst inward with a flash and a stink of hot dust. The room went dark, except for the window, where all those watching figures remained outlined against the black. The door slammed shut. I ran to it, pulled, kicked, shouted, tried the key. Nothing. The handle did not move. From the bathroom came the sound of a child crying, but underneath it, low and steady, was the cough of the man from upstairs. Then the bed depressed behind me, as if someone had sat down. Spring sighed. A woman's voice said, "He always waits until morning." The bathroom door opened. The deepest fear I have ever felt was quiet. My mind became very clear. I could hear every drip inside the wall. I could smell salt in the carpet. I could feel the warmth of the key in my fist. I looked to the window. Old sash. Painted shut, but rotten around the frame. I threw the desk chair through it. The glass did not break into the outside world. It broke into another room. A room exactly like mine, but older. Bed unmade. Wallpaper blistered. A suitcase open on the floor. A pair of little shoes placed neatly beside it. Beyond that room was another window. And beyond that, another room. The hotel was not a building anymore. It was a row of rooms nested inside each other, each one waiting behind the last. I climbed through the broken window. The next room smelled of seawater. The carpet squelched under my boots. I crossed it, smashed the next window with the chair, and climbed through again. Another room. Then another. Each one was worse because each one was almost normal. A cup of tea still steaming. A mirror turned to the wall. A child's red cardigan laid over the foot of the bed. In one room, my phone lay on the pillow. It lit as I passed. 2007 a.m. I checked my watch. It was 3042 in the afternoon. In the next room, someone knocked on the door from the outside. "Mr. Mercer," Elaine's voice called. "Your checkout is overdue." That almost got me. I almost went to the door because it sounded exactly like her, tired and irritated and alive. Then she added, in the child's voice, "Open the door. It is cold in here." I climbed through the next window. The final room had no furniture. Only a bare mattress on the floor, black with damp, and a door standing open to a fire escape. I could see daylight. Not warm daylight, not safe daylight, but real grey afternoon, with the sea beyond the wall. Something grabbed my ankle as I reached the fire escape. I did not look back. I kicked and kicked until my boot connected with something soft that made a sound like wet paper tearing. My foot came free. I fell through the door onto iron steps slick with rust, slid half a flight, hit my ribs, and kept moving. The fire escape ended in the back alley behind Morrow House. I landed beside 3 contractor bins and vomited until there was nothing left. When I looked up, the hotel was ordinary again. Dead windows, peeling paint, no lights, no voices. My car was still out front, but but the side door I'd entered through was chained from the outside. The new padlock hung untouched. I called Elaine from the pavement. This time the call went through. She answered on the first ring. "Are you out?" Not hello, not what happened. "Are you out?" I said yes. She exhaled, and in that sound I heard that she had expected something else. "Do not go back in for your equipment," she said. "You knew." Silence. "You knew about room 12. There is no room 12. Elaine. She did not speak for a long time. Then she said, "Some buildings go wrong. They keep the shape of something bad that happened inside them. Most of the time they just rot. Sometimes they learn." Why send me? Because the contractors demanded a current survey and because everyone local refused. "But I am not local." "No," she said, "you were not." I did not understand that until I got home. There was a message waiting on my answering machine. The red light blinked in the dark hall. One new message. The timestamp was 2017 AM. At first there was only static, then the sound of rain, then a man coughing. My own voice came through, very close to the microphone. "Do not take the key." Behind the voice, a child began to cry. The next morning, I found the Morrow House key on my kitchen table. I had dropped it in room 12. I know I had. But there it was, warm in the morning light, the tag facing up. It no longer said "return before morning." It said "occupied." I drove to the council office and left it on Elaine Porter's desk. She did not look surprised. She opened a drawer, took out a small metal cash box, and placed the key inside. There were other keys in that box, dozens of them, all with different tags, all warm. Morrow House was demolished 3 weeks later. I watched from the seawall with half the town. Nobody spoke much. When the dust cleared, there was a space under the old foundations. Not a cellar, exactly, more like a sealed service void, bricked in from all sides. The demolition crew found old luggage, a child's shoe, a hotel ledger, and a rusted bed frame bolted to the concrete. They also found 26 room keys. I stopped taking demolition contracts. For a while I thought distance would thin it out. The dreams. The smell of wet carpet. The phone waking me at 2017 with no number on the display. But some places do not stay where they were built. Some places learn your name and carry a room for you. Last month, I stayed in a hotel for the first time in years. Business conference. Big, modern place near the motorway. Glass lifts. Key cards. No history worth mentioning. The receptionist smiled and gave me room 214. I laughed because I was tired, and because fear becomes embarrassing when you have lived with it too long. "Any chance of a different room?" I asked. "Of course," she said. "Let me see what is free." She typed for a moment, frowned, and printed a new key card. "There we are. Last room at the end of the corridor. Nice and quiet." The card sleeve said room 26. I nearly handed it back. Then somewhere behind the reception desk, inside a little wooden key box that did not belong in a modern hotel, a landline phone began to ring. Once. Twice. 3 times. The receptionist did not seem to hear it, but I did. And beneath the ringing, faint and patient, a child whispered, "Mister, it is cold in here." That is the end of tonight's story. If you made it this far, check the door is properly shut before you sleep. And if a hotel ever tells you the last room is nice and quiet, ask for one near the lift. Good night.
Rupert Harcourt. Chilling tales, paranormal encounters, every story leaves a mark.